I am Mark Harvey. I am the director of the MBA program here at the University of St. Mary, and I'm really happy to see you here. What I have here on this slide is just sort of a list of all the courses, all the core courses in the program, and then what the different concentration choices are as well. So in the top white area, those are all the core courses, everything that's required of every MBA student, no matter what their concentration is. And then down below, like I said, those concentrations are listed of the concentrations themselves. So each one of those has 3 courses associated with it. And then obviously you choose one of those things, and then it allows you to specialize in a particular area, hopefully that will help you advance your career. In our program, you can choose, you can do online, in person, or a combination of both. Between both online and in person, the requirements are the same, the curriculum is the same. We don't have very many tests, very many quizzes in the MBA program. There are some in accounting. I think there might be some in finance as well, but I think it's just those 2 quantitative courses where there's that kind of instruction. Most of the time, you're going to be doing a combination of different kinds of activities. So you might have case studies, for example, where you're learning principles and concepts through that. Sometimes you will have reflection papers, things that you're going to read something and reflect on it. You may have tasks that mirror what's happening, in a real potential job. But one of the things that nearly all of the courses have are projects that are usually, they span the whole course, and they're broken up in pieces throughout the course. For example, when you get to global management, one of the key projects is to take a U.S. business and hypothetically internationalize it, right? Move it overseas or introduce international components to it. And it's a challenging assignment, but it's also broken up into parts week by week. You do a proposal at the beginning. One week you're focusing on the marketing plan, another the HR plan, and so you're turning stuff in, I'm grading it, and then you're compiling it together in order to come up with this piece at the end. And most of our assignments are intended to mimic the kinds of things that you might do in a business if you're serving that particular function. So it's more, we're thinking more about the practical application side and creating an experience. Both of them have structured deadlines, and the online is not a self-paced course. There are very specific deadlines to get you through that program, and this is an accelerated program, right? We shove a lot into 8 weeks, and as a result, it's really important that people stay paced, and so that's, like I said, that's especially important on the online side. Online does tend to have a little bit more writing in it, because to substitute for the in-person component, we have forums which allow students to interact in that, and that usually requires the writing of sort of like a prompt or question or an answer in response to a prompt, and then an interaction between the different students in the classroom. You should be able to take all of your core courses in person, unless something crazy happens. We generally offer all of those in person. As far as the concentrations go, that's a little bit more mixed depending on what the demand is from the students. So like if you took a general management concentration, for example, that's something that we pretty much always offer in person and online. So you hypothetically, if you took that path, hypothetically, you could take all 11 of those courses in person. If you chose one of the other concentrations in a marketing direction, it's very likely that those would be online, because that's just where the demand has been for those particular classes. So those 3 concentration courses being online. Like I said, it may not be 100% on in person, but it also depends on which course track you think that you want to take. As far as the schedule, the layout of the program, there are 6 8-week sessions and 2 extended breaks per year. The breaks basically are around Christmas, when there's about a month off, and then spring break, where there's a week off, and that's usually about the 2nd week in March or something like that, when we break between those 2 sessions. Other than that, we run courses all year long. So there's 6 terms, starting with Fall 1, which we're in the middle of right now. That one starts. at the end of August. Then the fall 2 starts in the middle of October. Then our spring sessions begin in January and then March, and then our 2 summer sessions start roughly at the beginning of May and then at the beginning of July. You can take time off if you need to. So like, let's say that there's something big happening in your life, who knows what, right? Sometimes people have babies, they get married, sometimes there's deaths in a family or emergencies or something like that. We can still try to keep you on track best we can. We could definitely be flexible with you in those sorts of circumstances. But what most people do is try to take those classes back to back as much as possible. If you're an in-person student, you meet one night a week, and those classes are offered between Monday and Thursday, and the time is between 6 and 9:50 in the evening. So it's an almost 4-hour class. But I will also tell you, hopefully not to make you intimidated by the notion of being in class for 4 hours. We do take breaks about every hour or so, take a little 5-minute break. It's a little bit more like taking 4 classes in a row on a single subject than it is like taking one big, like, oh my gosh, I'm just stuck in here for an hour. And I also think that active learning is really important. It's an important part of our curriculum. Like, there's no way I could run a class if I was just delivering information straight at you for 4 hours, right? I mean, we have to have a sense of, it's got to be dynamic, there's got to be discussion, there's got to be maybe addressing problems and some exercises and things like that. There's certain interactive elements. Personally, I like introducing games and simulations in the classroom as well. I think it's fun. I think it's great. But yeah, it's not like a lot of traditional classes where it's just, PowerPoint or whatever, lecture the whole time. You're going to get a variety of teaching approaches that will kind of keep things really rolling anyway between that 4-hour time period. Online classes are asynchronous, meaning that there's no specific class meeting times. It's the deadlines and the curriculum that really drives the way that those classes run. Things to keep in mind as you're coming back to school, getting ready for graduate school, that I always want to tell people just at the outset to make sure that they're really prepared and can be successful in graduate school. One is that, maybe this is no surprise, but grad school is hard and it's a serious time commitment. And it's crazy that I should have to say that, but there are lots of schools out there that kind of try to say, oh, grad school will be so easy. All you have to do is blah, 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 right? And I think the schools that generally say that are either lying to you or not very good schools. It should be a challenge, right? You're here to learn, and it is a time-consuming challenge. I would say that, if you're thinking about just time management, how much time to assume it may take in a week, I think that you should plan on maybe 15 to 20 hours a week. So it's a little bit like taking on a part-time job. This might include those 4 hours that you have live in the classroom, but I think that's the way at least you should initially plan. Now, this might change a little bit over time too. A lot of times students come in very zealous and super excited and a little nervous, and they study a whole lot, and they realize maybe by the time they get to their second class that, like, hey, I've gained certain efficiencies, I've got processes in place and I could be a little more efficient with my time. So it may get a little bit easier between class 1 and class 2, but it still probably is going to be pretty significant. Another factor that may affect how much time you're spending in class is what that individual class is. Like, if you're sharp on the marketing end, you may be very efficient at that. If finance is more challenging, then you may be spending a little more time in your finance course. I will say by the time you get to the end of the program, there are a couple of classes that are pretty heavy, right? Like strategic management and ethics and global management. Those are two that really are, there's a lot to them. There's a lot of pieces, and sometimes students come along and they're sort of, they've gotten used to the flow of things, and they get to these courses toward the end and they're like, whoa, okay, that seems like a lot, right? And so, but that's just kind of the flow. Those two particular courses are what we call summative courses. Their purpose is to take the stuff that you've learned throughout the program and try to integrate it in practical ways so that you're demonstrating your knowledge, not just on 2 subjects, but on like the broad range of things that you're trying to do, so that by the time you're done, you really are prepared with some knowledge that you can walk out with that's very practical for you. But like I said, I don't want to mislead you and say, like, this is going to be super easy. I mean, it's not, but I will also say it's awesome and it's worth it, and it is what it is, right? It's great. Couple of other things I might mention, just as far as keys to success, is that it's really important to continue to communicate with your family, friends, and employer. To take this much time over the period of a year or 2 years, that's significant, and sometimes it means that you're not there at times when people expect you to be there. Maybe your spouse is like, okay, well, spouse always is going to mow the lawn on Sunday and is always going to do all this sort of stuff, and it may be like sitting down and saying, okay, well, this time when I used to mow the lawn, we're going to have to figure something out because now I have to study, or maybe I have to do that at a different time, or whatever. And so getting support from those people that are really important in your life, right? Getting your employer to understand that, like, hey, maybe I have to leave to get to class on time at 6 p.m. at night. The more you communicate and the more you get support from the people around you, the more successful you're going to be. Other things that I really want to talk about, another one is networking and relationships. I really believe that being successful in an MBA program isn't only about the curriculum, it's also about the relationships that you develop and the people that you meet. And some of those people will be people in your classroom, right? And there's going to be a mix of different people. There will be some younger students who have finished their undergraduate degree and they're graduate assistants at the university, and they're sharp and they're young and they're here to sort of learn, and that's some of who will be in the classroom. The other will be seasoned professionals who have been doing something for a number of years and maybe are looking to make an upward move or a lateral move, some change that's going to like move them into a management position. And because there's these people from different backgrounds, especially like different areas of business, you end up learning a lot from each other. And this is another thing I really love about this program, is I actually may learn as much from the students as they learn from me. Because I've got my areas of specialization, and I love teaching. It's just great. But one of the great things about being in a classroom is that in this format, you've got these different students from different backgrounds, and we get into a conversation, and it gets really interesting. Because, for example, I am not an accountant, right? That is not my background. I can do the basic stuff, but that's why I don't teach accounting, right? But I can end up with some person in there who's great at accounting. That's her job, and she's talking about some application of accounting that applies to something that I'm teaching, and I'm like, whoa, I just learned something cool. It's a really dynamic environment where you've got a teacher up there that's providing their experience, and they're talking about the concepts, but you have this room full of people that really has a lot of interesting things to share. And so I think you'll enjoy that aspect of it too. And sometimes these people that you meet, they may lead to new job opportunities, new professional things that really make a difference in your life. But the other part of the networking relationships also is your professors, your instructors, right? A lot of these people are going to be people who are managers in local businesses who, know people and have a great deal of practical knowledge about whatever area they're teaching in. And so I think it's really important not to think about that as some sort of distant person who's just delivering information, but rather think about them as a mentor, a friend, somebody you can go have coffee with or have a drink with or whatever, and ask them, talk to them, right? Let them share information with you. They may provide the next another job as well, or some other sort of future opportunity. They're there to support you, they're there to help you, they're there because they like students and they want to try to help them be successful. And so taking full advantage of that person is really, I think, an important part of that process too. And we have some really great instructors that have some really excellent experience. Think about Phil Watlington, for example, who's a full-time professor here at the university, but he's also a former CFO from GE. Jim Cox is one of our guys who teaches marketing. He's a retired guy, but he's done hundreds of commercials for Ford and Chrysler, and was kind of a higher up in those organizations. There's one guy who actually he teaches our small business management course, and he's a graduate of the USM MBA program, and he actually started up a small business, made a load of money, hired a bunch of his classmates to help him run the business, and then sold it off for, don't know how much money, but a lot. And he's, become sort of a VP in some of the healthcare organizations around here, and now is working with a healthcare startup. But that's what happens, I think, sometimes when you get yourself in this classroom and you make yourself familiar with these other people, you make friendships and connections, and that's part of what has the potential to really grow you and your professional career. There are lots of people who come into the MBA program and do not come from a business background, and they do okay. We try to build in some amount of preparation for you so that you don't just go into this thing cold. And we do this in a couple of ways. Like when you get your acceptance letter, there's going to be some links to some primer courses. Like if you've never had an economics course before, you may want to do the economics primer. Or if you're not totally comfortable with writing, maybe like having a writing course. These are like they're self-paced courses, they're online, they're provided by a third-party provider. I think it's about $40 right now for the course, so it's not like super expensive or anything like that. I think it's somewhere between 8 to 16 hours of a crash course that would get you set up on the basics of that. We actually used to push accounting and finance as primer courses for people to start off with, but what we ended up doing is actually just building those into the courses. So when you get into accounting, in the first week, you're going to get like if you never took accounting before, here's your primer course, and that'll be one of your first assignments. Or if you've never had finance before, you're going to get that. And that's because we have students that don't have that business background, and we want to make sure that you have an on-ramp so that you're not just overwhelmed and you don't know what you're doing. Like the leadership course I teach, they may or may not have had even an MBA course when I'm doing that one with them. But I assume that these adult learners that I have are smart and ambitious, and we push you pretty hard, pretty fast, and we'll start with nothing and we'll get you to a really high level. I don't know, I wouldn't be intimidated by what you don't know. I think the more realistic challenge for you is just making time to be successful and getting the people around you to support you. And then, and that, like I said, part of that is your family and friends, but like getting support from, your peers in class and from those instructors, it's a winning combination. Talk about how some of the professors can be mentors for you, but I also want to mention this because maybe there's a certain area that you're interested in that you want to know more about. I can connect you with even like former alumni, people who have gone through this program and might like to talk to you more about areas that you're interested in. So that's something else that we can arrange if it's something that you're interested in doing. And so the final piece I really want to mention here is that when you're working on an MBA, right, this is a master's program, so you're working toward mastery. And unlike an undergraduate degree where it's a little bit all over the place, there's all these sort of gen ed requirements, and then you're trying to learn something about your major, this is like all major. It really is like an opportunity for you to get really good at the things that you're very interested in. And it's an opportunity to develop expertise. And to me, that is the most important thing, is that you have an experience here, that you go through things that will give you stuff that is going to be helpful for you. There are some people who come to me in sessions like these, and they talk to me and they're really focused on getting the MBA because it's sort of there's a job and it requires an MBA, and it's something that you need in order to get something else. The problem with that mentality is that if all you're interested in is that piece of paper, a lot of people can jump through hoops and maybe, barely get by and get that piece of paper and make it work, right? The problem is what happens afterwards, right? If you're not giving it 100%, if you're not immersing yourself in the material and really taking advantage of this opportunity, you get to that point and maybe you don't know all the things that you ought to know. You're not as good as you could be. And I think that's something that really differentiates a lot of our USM students, is that it's not just the program itself. It's the ambition, it's the drive, it's the desire to want to be better. And if you come in with a great attitude that this is a great opportunity and I'm going to get out of this what I put into it, then it can really transform your life in a positive way. people do get MBAs all the time, right? I mean, I'm not any smarter than you are, right? I've just had a little bit more school, and school is something that can be done, right? You read your books, you go through class, you accept the challenges, and it's hard work, but is absolutely achievable. And one of my favorite things is graduation, right? Every year I get to stand on a platform and students walk over and I get to shake their hand and put this hood over their shoulders and tell them, congratulations. I mean, I get emotional about it. It's like I really feel connected to these students and excited about their future. And so even though I'm telling you, yeah, it's going to take all this time, and yeah, it's going to be challenging, and yeah, you should really put as much as you can into this thing, it is something that you can do, that people can do. There's sacrifices. You may have to make adjustments in your life, but it really is an enriching experience. And for a short period of life, you sacrifice a little bit and you walk away a better person. You have any other questions for me or things you'd like to talk about? I can always meet with you one-on-one at any other point, or you can email me if you've got questions. Well, I look forward to seeing you in the program, and if there's anything I can do for you in the meantime, just let me know.